1960 in Ottawa, and I retired in 1996, 36 years of fun.
So what did you do with the Ottawa Fire Service? What was your
Very
primary
little.
job? Very little.
I worked for 10 and a half years as a lineman in the maintenance department of the City of Ottawa Fire Department for fire alarm boxes, two-way radios, and cable that we installed throughout the city. The city is a lot bigger now than it was back then. There was 3 of us working, and I was a lineman in the maintenance division, and I drove a line truck.
So when you say fire alarm boxes and you say communications, what are you talking about specifically?
Boxes on the corner for people to phone if they had a fire, and then we had 20 boxes in Alta Vista that had a yellow door on the bottom, and they were called combination boxes. And if somebody just had a sprained ankle and they needed an ambulance, they would pick up the phone and we would get it, transfer the call to ambulance, and send an ambulance out that they didn't have a fire. But in the rest of the city, if any time anything, you get a fire alarm box pulled, it may not be a fire, it may be an accident, it may be anything not relating to a fire. They were installed in 1939 and we took them out in 1970 because the city couldn't afford to put the cables underground. Charlotte Whitten was the mayor, and she wasn't going to spend the extra money to put all these cables underground because they wanted to get rid of the poles. So they told us to take them out in 1970, and by 1971, in July, we finished, went on a month's holidays, and then went firefighting. So this is the story of the fire alarm box in Ottawa, which was originally installed in 1939 and lasted till 1970. 31 years.
So what have you got in front of you there? It looks like you have an album.
I have an album that I and a few other people out of my office took pictures as we went along. The fire alarm box came in on these rollers and were punched in there, and a 4-digit number was allotted to a corner. And when these through the circuitry came in here and punched the number out, we would have dispatchers and people in here working, usually 2 people to a shift, and they would read that and know the corner and send the appropriate rigs. And it was a foolproof system because it has a ground and 2 wires, and if one wire was broke, the ground became the second wire. So no matter what kind of weather there was, it was always working. 24 hours a day for 41 years.
Where was this particular building?
50 William Street and the Byward Market building.
What do we got here? Is that the same building?
That's the same office. With the dispatcher here, the switchboard operator here, and this gentleman, Bill Nash, is operating the combination box area for the switchboard. All plug wires, and we had the waterworks, the ambulance, and all in there. We could take the wire out and put it in there so they could get direct call.
So from the time the call came in to the time that fire department responded, how much time was roughly between that time? Like when the original call went out?
The census putting down 3 minutes. They allowed 3 minutes.
And how would you know what type of call was coming in?
You didn't know what it was in the fire alarm box, but usually if it was a big fire, you get people phoning in besides telling you what was going on. All you knew was the fire alarm box is pulled, and you were supposed to respond with the appropriate apparatus.
So you've got quite a treasure of pictures and stuff there.
Yeah, that's all the stuff that all that's left of what my tenure was. This picture here is part of the old big fire in 1916 when the Parliament buildings burnt. And this is a fire pumper pulled by horses that was engulfed in the flame and burnt. This was one of the reports that I had to make about it. We lost a couple of kids in that fire. They were started a fire in a closed closet, and then they pulled the door shut and we couldn't find them.
Can we pull that out and maybe you can show us how it was written out? So, what year was that?
The call came, it was on the tape number, it was number 35, came in by phone, was 1995, Center on Boulevard, Unit 14. It was a row housing project. It came in at 0124 in the morning, and we were on location at 126, 2 minutes later. And then there was a code 9 because they believed there was people trapped or people died. So then there was a code 1, there was people dead, and people trapped as code 2. And they had 4 stationed there, 4 pump and truck, 8 pump and aerial. The squad truck was there, the emergency car, and Father LaRose from the fire service, and 4 chiefs. So that was one bad fire, but it was started by children.
And there were some fatalities in that particular one that you
Yeah.
remember?
There
So-
was, but the 2 children died in that.
So this is one of the call sheets that you would have filled out then?
Yeah,
As a dispatcher?
as a dispatcher, yeah. And then the firefighters would call back when they got back at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I put down the time and their name. They book everything back in commission.
Hmm.
So every call was a lot, and if you had more than one call in the same district, these rigs were not in commission. We had to find rigs that were in commission and send them. So it wasn't just, like a lot of people say, well, what happens if the fire trucks are out? Send other fire trucks from another station and tell them. They'd be saying, well, we're responding in the number 4's district. This is number 5 pump responding in number 4's district. So we always had, just like the fire alarm boxes, we were on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And if you were at work, you're expected to do everything you were told to do. And if you didn't, you weren't there working there too long, that's for sure.
So what inspired you to get on the Ottawa Fire Service?
Money.
Money?
No,
What were you making back then when you first started?
not very much. I have my tax sheet right here. I made $3,181.62 for the whole year of 1961.
In 1961. And again, when did you start?
December 1st, 1960.
Wow.
My first truck was a 1950 Chev.
That was the lineman truck?
No, that was a line truck, yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of equipment would you have carried on there?
Ladders, 2, we had 1 ladder on the side, 1 ladder on the top. All the stuff that Hydro would carry, their tool belt, their belt for the climbing, and spurs for your feet so you could climb.
Was safety a big issue back then? Or trying to be safe? Or was it kind of a...
I had an experience at the corner of Preston and Wellington. I had an experience in July. O'Keefe's had a brewery right at the corner. There was a temperature of about 90 degrees outside, and I was up there and the hops were blowing across Wellington Street and I fell asleep.
Now, how old would you have been here, Brian, in this picture?
Oh, I was in, I'd say 45.
And what do we have in some of these other pictures that I just kind of zoomed in on?
Jerry Hill's on a pole and Marty Sims is on the street.
So these are some of the boxes that you worked on.
Yeah, that was on the first one we took out on King Edward.
So how many boxes do you figure there was in the city of Ottawa? Alarm boxes.
There was about 200 boxes, somebody told me that.
So we've got a couple of alarm boxes over here. Do you mind sharing with us how they worked?
You pull the white door down, which protected the hole in the box from moisture getting in, and you pulled the hook down and it set off a cog like an alarm clock, and the one round was operated by a spring, and there was a circuit going through it. Every time the cog clicked over the plunger, it sent break the circuit and sent a punch through the paper in the office and printed the number. It was like 4413, and that's the box that this.
So you're going to show us the inner workings of these, are you? Come on over, Brian.
I'll go and show you how to operate it. I operated a few of my days.
Uh-huh. So what's the difference between this particular one here? Let me just zoom out here a bit. That one and that particular one. So which one do you want to start with?
I'll start with, this is the oldest box. These were patented in Boston, Massachusetts in 1928. And they were bought by the city of Ottawa and installed in Ottawa in 1939. Taken out in 1970. You pull this down and you pull this down, and it started the cog working, and I tapped in a number. And that was all there was to it. Then you were asked to stay there until a rig came in case the fire was down a side street or over in a field. These boxes were for internal use only, and they were mostly in government buildings and hospitals and mints.
Would they have had a direct line to the communications center of the Ottawa Fire Service as well?
No, these boxes were internal only. They went to the watchman's desk.
It's like a security guard or whatever.
Yeah, and he would direct it from there.
So when you say cogwheel, there's something inside of here if we can open that up. I'll let you open it up because you've got the... So what do we got in here before we open that up? What?
All you got in here is a lock, and this mechanism here that goes down, which
triggers that?
turns on there and pushes that down and starts the whole thing going like an alarm clock. There's a spring in there, and you wind it up after you've used it like a clock, and that has tension on it. When you trip this lever, it starts in the motion and it'll go through 4 times.
So they would send in a signal 4 times, almost like Morse code?
Yeah.
And how often was this wound up, or was it only after every call, every time it was used?
Every Friday.
Every Friday. So there'd be how many of you staff going around winding these things up?
Me.
Just you?
Just
And how long would it take you to wind up? I don't know, how many of those did you have to
They
wind
might
up?
have, like in a busy week, they might have 50 boxes to wind. It'd take all day because it's all over the city.
So you do a lot of traveling. So the cog that you're talking about that has the... Is that wheel right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The spring there, and as soon as you trip that,
And so of course that would sound off this bell here. And this little lever right here, Brian.
there's our test.
So that's going to keep going till it's
Can't
like
stop it.
No. So that was your test. So this would be something you would press down, which would send a signal back to the communications saying you're testing it. And you told us a little story earlier about that wonderful little button, how you used to aggravate those that were over on the other end
The dispatcher.
because you had a certain code that you would press,
We had it told we were supposed to.
but you would annoy them by pressing down on that little lever often.
The code was 3333.
So how would you do 3333 on there? That's it, just 3 presses.
Then they knew it was either trouble or me.
So there's a book that's over on the stand over there, the red book. I'll let Brian go get it. The one over there, the book, the red book. What was that all about? What was that red book all about?
It was mainly to when the dispatcher got the box that was coming in, he would pick up that book and know exactly what corner it was. Because all it was to tell you where that corner was this wheel going over through the electric circuit, going to the fire alarm office at 50 William Street, and they would look up the box.
So I'm gonna ask Brian just to go grab that book. It's over in the corner on the shelf there, to the right there, Brian. Yeah, just right there. Right where the little stuffed toys are. Yeah, there we go. So this particular book, which I believe is an original.
It's an original.
Yeah, and inside would be different four number.
They were all done
numbers.
in sections.
Mhm.
I think there's 4. Any hospital or any thing that was boxes that were inside were 6 digits start. Anything with 6 was a building that was a hospital or a mint or something like that. It was government or city. And we knew about that when a 6-digit came in. We had looked it up on the last page.
So how many calls do you figure would go in a year back in your days, like when these boxes were in place?
You could have a low week at about 20 calls through the fire alarm box system, or you could have 100 calls. It depended if there was a storm, a snowstorm, a big rainstorm, an ice storm, depending on all those things, or a football game. And there was lots of false alarms too.
I was going to ask you about false alarms, kids pulling them just out of pranks.
Not only kids, all kinds, young, old, and in the middle.
And there was no way of tracing them. You could trace the box, but not the...
We had to respond with the rigs to that box location. If there was nobody there, we knew off the hand, it was pretty well a false alarm. So the police department had some luminol, and they were going to put it on the white trigger on the front of the box here, and that would have a fingerprint. And it didn't work that well.
No, because not everybody was fingerprinted.
That's right.
So how
No
would you
record of
follow
it.
up on it?
Yeah.
So this is put out by Gamewell. What's the purpose of this? Just the company that...
The Gamewell is a system. It was a big company in the States.
Any, you think you probably worked on this one?
More than likely.
Yeah. Bring back
That one
memories?
too.
Let's go over and talk about this one. So what do we got here, Brian?
These were put in about 1955 when they found out that Alta Vista was in the city of Ottawa without boxes, and they needed something, and they got a hold of Northern Electric Company who had boxes like this, and they said you have to run a pair of wires plus the other pair of wires. So you had to run 4 wires to every one of these boxes. Plus you had to have a good ground in case you had a failure. So you could open this up and you could talk on the phone.
And that would go
to the
directly?
switchboard at the fire alarm office and tell them exactly what the problem was. It may not be fire related. And the same procedure.
So this might, because it's top heavy, I'll hold on to it, but let's open it up there. So tell us all about this particular, I got it here. Tell us all about this particular one. Same concept?
Same thing, except you had a relay here with extra power and to run your phone.
So could this call a cab, call your mother-in-law?
Sure, and we had some weird calls.
People actually thought it was an actual phone where they could...
Oh, they wanted to speak to different people. They'd call up, say, is Joe there? Is this the fire department? Yes, it's the fire department. What's your problem? Oh, we don't really have a problem. We don't want to see if the phone works fine. Hang it up, please, or else we'll send the police out there.
But again, by the time you got there, they would be
Oh,
gone.
they'd be gone. And if you did get sent, some of my friends were on the police department, and we send them out here to get them. They didn't like it too well because nobody was around. Everybody was
So a
gone.
wasted trip for them.
Yeah. So these were in from 1955 to 1970, and then we took them all out.
And what do they do with most of them?
There's a road that goes from the filtration plant on the Ottawa River to Wellington Street. That used to be a bay, and most all the boxes are in the bottom of that. Underneath that road is a garbage dump.
Wow. So you don't think there's too many in circulation now?
No.
In a sense of
And
maybe...
Dave's going out there with a shovel, and going to dig some up.
I think I may go out and dig some up there, Brian. So memories of these boxes or your service, any memories?
It was a good time. They were a foolproof system if people treated them right. And if people wanted to play with them, they ended up in jail. There's a lot, we had police sitting in their cars watching certain trouble boxes, and we had chiefs on their days off doing the same thing. So we tried to keep it as what the purpose was, to save lives and to stop property damage. And this system worked very good, but it wasn't that much of an upkeep, 3 people on the whole city, but the cables were on poles and they were taking them off Laurier and the Laurier Avenue Bridge and all that area. Then they were going to move City Hall from 111 Sussex Street to Laurier, and they didn't want unsightly wires outside the City Hall. So that was
Who was that directed by mostly? Which mayor was that directed by mostly? That they didn't want the unsightly wires?
Can't remember.
He said it earlier.
Well, Holzman was there,
Yeah.
but she wasn't then.
Yeah.
That was way past. That was way before her. time.
Yeah.
Jim Durrell was in that bunch too.
Yeah.
So
So after these went out of service, what did you end up doing for the Ottawa Fire Service?
I was detailed to firefighting, and I had an operation after 4 years, and I couldn't carry anything heavy, so I went into dispatching and answering the phone where this phone used to come to as the fire alarm office, which was moved to Alta Vista, at Randall and Alta Vista, as the new communication center. Then in 1990, the city coughed up $1 million and built us a new building. It was round with an elevator in it, 2 stories, and we had a television camera because we could let people in that we wanted to. Otherwise, you couldn't get in because you had to come up in an elevator, and we'd send the elevator down or up.
And I believe that particular building is bomb-proof, hurricane-proof, so the story goes. It's
When they
a
had all the
good place to be in the event of a nuclear attack, maybe, I don't know.
there was a lot of windows in the older fire alarm office because it was built as a health office and in the south end of Ottawa, and it was on the highest point of ground, so we had good aerial and radio activity out there. So it was a better system. But when people start going around and stealing things out of fire stations and threatening to bomb places, they put in 3/4-inch plywood over the windows, and you could, when an airplane went over the top, all the windows would rattle, but you couldn't see them. That was the bulletproof glass.
Wow. So what do you do now in your retirement?
As much as I want to do.
That's right.
Go and sit at Shirley's Bay on the Ottawa River and meet interesting people.
That's right. So this is Mr. Brian Ross, retired from the Ottawa Fire Service, again, what year?
Officially 1996, but I left in May 24th, 1994 on sick leave. Because when I worked there, I never took any sick leave. I got people to work for me because we were on so much money a year, and you could take holidays or you could take sick leave, but if you didn't take sick leave, you could go and retire a year and a half before and then run your sick leave. And it was more profitable that way than to take the sick leave.
Thank you.